This podcast is sponsored by NHS Lancashire and South Cumbria Integrated Care Board and Beacon Counselling Trust, promoting an open discussion about gambling-related harm and the destruction it can cause. If you're affected by anything you hear and would like to reach out, visit beaconcounsellingtrust.co.uk. Let's keep talking.
Welcome back to Football Untold, the podcast that explores the darker side of the beautiful game. Thanks for checking us out, your streams and your downloads. Get involved on social media using the hashtag FootballUntold. In each episode of this podcast, we're hearing from professional footballers who are sharing their stories of problem gambling, what that means to them, how it impacted their lives, and how they found a way through it. We've got Simon Howarth, former Wales international, in the studio alongside Clark Carlisle. And our next guest is Sam Wedgebury. Now, Sam is 34 years of age. He's been on the books of 13 clubs in his career so far, starting at Worcester City before having spells at Sheffield United, Mansfield, Ferencváros, Macclesfield, Altrincham, Stevenage, Forest Green, Wrexham, Chesterfield, Buxton, Stalybridge, and now Worksop Town. He can play defence or in midfield, and he's currently playing the Macclesfield role in the Football Untold studios. Please welcome to the studio, Sam Wedgebury.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, not a problem at all. Great to see you. Did I get all your clubs there and missing anything?
Sounds a lot, yeah, but I didn't realise I'd had that many. But I'm out of contract at the end of the season, so it's a good plug, that.
Ferencváros is the one that stands out. What was going on there? What was the story?
Yeah, Sheffield United chairman, Mr. McCabe, bought the club out there. So a few of us got to go on loan out there for a few months, and we won the league out there. And then I went back the second season, but then I fractured my metatarsal. But what a place to live, Budapest, unbelievable city.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really great to get you on. We've had Si on last episode, a guy who played for a number of championship clubs, Wales international as well. We talked about his experience in the Premier League as well. Clark Carlisle as well, still in the studio before that as well. Sam, I think you're a really great guest to have on, not just in terms of your story, but also in the fact that your journey, if you like, through football is one which actually a lot of people experience. That sometimes people assume that, one club and enjoy your career and have a long, successful career. But for a lot of people, it's a job and you've got to find places to work, and that can involve travelling, it can be moving around, and there's uncertainty and sort of life sometimes throws that at you. And maybe that's something you've experienced through that career, that you don't always know what's coming next, but then when you get the opportunity, you grab it.
Yeah, it's a lot of what I put down to when I was gambling, but it stems from moving from place to place and not being settled in one place, and the insecurity. A lot of it through football, insecurity, not knowing you've got a contract next season. You do it, and that led to a lot of my gambling with the escapism away from these environments. But I'd always had my home based in Sheffield with my wife, but travelling around and it does take its toll on you. And now I'm happy that I'm sort of settled, and obviously I've got a job which pays my wages basically, and my football money now is just an added bonus. So. The big thing for me the last 3 years since I've gone part-time, I'm a lot happier because there's not as much uncertainty of getting contracts for next season and these things. So yeah, it's I'm thankful it's took me to all these different places because I've had different life experiences and speaking to different people of different backgrounds and beliefs, but obviously now I'm happy that I'm settled in Sheffield with my wife and 3 kids.
What's the reality of that from a professional point of view? Is it about is it 1 year contracts, or is it like a 3 year contract, but actually a new manager comes in and straight away you're thinking, I'm not going to be part of this guy's plans? So there's uncertainty puts you in a pretty vulnerable position because you're thinking, and am I as good as what they've got in their squad, or am I going to fit into this other squad?
It's non-league especially, so conference downwards, there is a lot of 1 year contracts, which doesn't really, you always obviously try and get as many years as you can on a deal, and I was quite fortunate at Forest Green. I signed 2 years and a couple of other clubs, but yeah, it makes you so insecure in terms of you've got no sort of stability, and me as a person, I cope better with structure and stability. So it's like, right, moving, you can't even afford to really buy a house. If you rent, it's most of your money gone when you've got a mortgage in your city where you live in. It's so difficult to fathom that, really, moving away. And was lucky really at Forest Green. There was a clubhouse where we got to live for 3 years where we didn't have to pay for, and Wrexham was the same. But everywhere else, it's been trying to find somewhere to get your head down as cheap as possible, really, because obviously you're not earning the money that other higher up the leagues where you can potentially relocate, buy a house. It's sort of up and down the motorway, the M1 a lot for me, with a few car schools, which help the pocket a bit.
I think that stability thing is so crucial, and I think a lot of people listening to this will think, oh, that's me. And actually, when we talk about professional footballers, particularly at clubs at this level as well, previous episode we talked about, you know, life in the Championship, life in the Premier League as well. The money's very different, isn't it, at that level as well? And I think maybe people's expectations of, oh, he's a footballer, he's had a long career in football, he must be rolling in it by now. The reality of that within the sort of clubs you're talking about is a little bit different to maybe the perceptions.
Of course it is, but if you're on 40 grand a year, 50 grand a year, lower down, you're doing your dream job for that. So it's like, what else are you going to be doing? What you love doing? So there is that side to it, yeah, financially, but I've done a job that I've absolutely loved doing in terms of training daily and playing matches and going to nice grounds and obviously meeting people. You meet lots of people through your career. So on that front, yeah, financially it might not be, but the experience is the same. You're still doing something you love doing.
Do you see people you used to go to school with and stuff? They must be, where you got way off to next and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I've moved cities now, so it's a lot harder. Obviously, I'm based in Albury, which is in the West Midlands originally, and then when I was 16 I moved to Sheffield United, where I met my partner. So that was, obviously I don't see as many of my school friends and stuff now, but yeah, it's another club when you speak to people that have retired and it's like, oh, you got another, where you playing this year, what part of the country? So yeah, it's but coming back onto the gambling side, living away helped me gamble, because I had nobody to answer to. My wife was in Sheffield training as a nurse and shit, so I had lots of time on my own, which led to some dark times with my gambling. So that had obviously an effect.
Can I ask you, just from an age point of view, I don't like to point this out, you're slightly younger than the previous guys. There was a roll on the shoulders from Si and Clark there. But like the experience of sort of the smoky bookmakers, which is a lot of people experience that or remember that growing up. I'm guessing from your point of view, as you reach down the hole, you're entering. We're in the internet age, aren't we? I know you guys know the internet, right? Before you say right, but these guys are on the information superhighway, but you're on the smartphone, and yeah. I just wanted to sort of from a starting point of view, what did gambling look like to start off with?
For me, we used to go to the casino. And it started out as a free bet, and there was a curry night on a Tuesday night. So me and my friends, we used to go, and you place, because you used to get £5 red or black. So you put money on one and you free bet on the other, so you made a free £5. Obviously, I just remember from the first time I did that, I seriously was hooked. I know I was hooked from second one. I always had things as a kid growing up, but I had love. I had everything I needed. I had a great childhood, I had two great parents, but I always had tendencies for, say, gaming, or I'd always do stuff to excess as a kid, which then obviously when I first stepped foot in the casino, then it started. We meet there, excuses, watch football. We watched Champions League in the casino. We never watched it. We used to just stand on the roulette tables, get your free bet, that'd go, then you'd start your own money. So it was that, but obviously I did used to go into the bookies as well, but smartphone, it's so easy to do. And I'll tell a story in a bit about how bad it does get, and on your smartphone it's so accessible. I was with one betting company, obviously I won't name them, but I used to message a woman and I'd lose some bets on my online, and I'd just message this woman saying I didn't mean to put that bet on, I pressed the wrong button, and she'd refund it me as a free bet. Whereas now I look back, that kept me in because I was a good customer and I kept betting and obviously giving more money than what I had.
It's so interesting you say that it was as simple as that of, I like this feeling, let's pursue this.
I've never had a feeling like it. I genuinely say it, and I don't miss it, but nothing has ever replicated that feeling of when my number comes in on the roulette table or placing that bet for the split second. There's no feeling like I've got three beautiful boys, which I'm so thankful for, but I can never replicate that. I never really want to, because it's dangerous.
What did you feel it was giving you? What was that feeling? Was there a void that you thought, this is it? This is the thing I've been looking for?
Yeah, at the start it was the buzz of placing the bet and winning when it won. A few times I'd win, but then it was chasing the losses, and then it was, right, I can win that back. And in my head, I could never lose enough, and that's the scary thing as a problem gambler and a compulsive gambler. I would, if you win £1,000 you want 2, you win 2 you want 4. There's no limit to what you want to win, but then there's no limit to what you'll lose, and that's where it's very scary, because things what you're doing to fund your gambling are very, very harmful.
That idea of going into a casino with your club mates, with your teammates, was obviously within the culture of socialising and so on and so forth. When you were doing the stuff on your phone, was that echoing things that other players were doing? Was there a culture, of WhatsApp messages around who was doing what? Was that part of that same culture, do you think?
Yeah, it's rife. Non-league as well, more so, because people, you want money, and you think, in my head, I used to convince myself, I'll win £100 a day, that's £700 a week, that's a nice little income for me. That never happened because I was compulsive. And I used to get a feeling before the bookies, wherever I went in, I used to get this pit in my stomach, like a sick feeling, because I knew if I was going in with any amount of money, I was losing it. I wasn't coming out winning. And the only time towards the end, I wasn't getting any urges from any enjoyment from winning or losing or placing. I was just like a robot. Place the bet, split second, it loses, I go again. And it was just a split second of pressing the button to it losing or winning. I wasn't having any feeling towards it, and I was just absolutely exhausted. I would sleep better when I couldn't get any money. I didn't have any avenues to get money, and that's when I'd sleep better. Whereas before, if I won, I'd cash it, be in the wash bag in the boot of the car, knew it was there, or I could get some money from my bank, overdraft, whatever. I'd be in the toilet most of the night. My wife would be like, what are you doing in there? I've got a bad stomach, and I'd be spinning on the roulette, losing everything. Then I'd come in, sleep with my phone under my pillow because I didn't want her to see my emails, getting to the postman, cancelling my statements to come back to the house and things like this. And then obviously it's just all one big lie that you live in, and it all comes to a head eventually.
What were the emails saying? What sort of things were coming through?
It's just free bets or whatever coming through. But I found GA...
Gamblers Anonymous.
Gamblers Anonymous, yeah. I went on site and looked up because I didn't realise there was bits of help through the PFA and stuff then. So I did it all off my own back, and found GA through another lad that I played football with. He was attending, so he was like, oh, come. And first time round I went, probably did 3 or 4 weeks, and did the old stupid thing of, I'm not as bad as them in there, they're all down and outs, and there's teachers in there, there's doctors, there's all these people that this addiction takes control of, and they're professional people. So it's like, it was just... And then obviously something clicked within them 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks that I am like these. So
what were those moments for you? What's that moment for you that goes, here's a dead clear, obvious sign that I'm a problem gambler?
For me, obviously I don't like to talk about sums of money and things like that, and I totally own my gambling. I know there's hundreds of thousands of non-problem gamblers and that, and I'm not bitter or resentful towards it, but for me, I got a pay up of over £20,000, which to me at that time was a lot of money. Well, it is to anybody. And I'd done it all within an hour on the roulette, and it was on my iPad on the roulette, and I've still got the iPad to this day. I keep it. It's got a big crack down the screen because I'd been putting all these large sums of money on numbers, and the last spin I had 25p's on the number, and the one that I'd had loaded up came in and won. And it was like, oh my, and I just got the iPad and punched it and put a big crack down. I've still got it at home, and it reminds me of like where I was at. But I lived with a lad, and he won't mind me mentioning his name, Peter Hartley. He's a great lad, and we lived together, and he was living all my highs and lows. And he was like, listen, I'm gonna have to move out because it's just getting too much. Night before a game, and he's living the highs and lows with me. I'm walking around the living room, hands on the head, I've won, I'm cheering, or I've lost, I'm down, and he's like, I'm living all this through. And in the end, obviously, I ended up getting my pay up and going, like, which was beneficial. And we're friends, he doesn't, but it was just even things like that what I was putting him through.
That's £20,000 in an hour, and is a huge amount of money, obviously, to lose. But what did that mean to you at that time? Because obviously there's that, you talked about almost that habitual robotic element of it. Was the value of that money inconsequential? Could you see that? Were you thinking, oh, this will pay for Disneyland or whatever? Or was it just that there was still money in the pot so you could just keep going?
It was obviously the addictions took hold of you then, and I seen that 20 grand as I can make 100 here, I can make this. So that was my thinking. It wasn't, and then obviously it had all gone within an hour. And then my wife now, she's brilliant. I can talk to her about anything. And early on in my recovery through GA, you have the golden hour with your partner, and this was something that was weighing on my chest that I had to tell her. And it was from years before, and there was some things that I had to tell her and say, listen, this and this. You know that time when I had that money and it all went, and I said I lost it. I had to once go into the petrol station in Sheffield because I had a large sum of cash on me, and I'd lost it all in the casino on the way home. And she was like, oh, where's that money? And I went, oh, I was checking my pockets, convincing myself that I'd lost this money in the petrol station. Went into the petrol station. Woman said, you need to check the CCTV. I've lost X amount of money on the forecourt. And I knew I hadn't. And all these stupid things now you look back and think, what was I doing? But I was in the midst of addiction, and like I say, I fully own it, and I'm not resentful towards anyone. I'm sort of thankful that I've gone through that chapter in my life now, and I'm in recovery, and I'm seeing a positive life.
That story echoes something that Si Howarth was talking about, Clark Carlisle as well, that actually there's a moment where it goes beyond the money and it goes beyond the placing of the bet. It comes into the lie, the deceit, the what can I say to deflect from this situation. And you must have found yourself walking back to that petrol station thinking, what were you thinking, what am I doing here? Or were you thinking, I need to fulfill this, like I need to play this out just to convince myself that I've said or done the right thing?
You convince yourself because you're trying to buy into your own lie, and that's the sad thing. And that's where I was at in my head, like not logically thinking, oh, just tell her you've lost the money in the casino. But obviously I couldn't, because then she'd want to see the bank statements, then she'd want to see all these things which uncover my lie. But you're the best liar ever. You can convince anyone of everything until you've got no other avenues to go down, which we've heard before. It all comes to a head. You get found out, and I'm lucky that I got caught in the bookies the second time, but I believe it was a cry for help because I knew I'd get found out.
What, can you talk through that?
Yeah, I had family up, so we had a nice little get together at my house. We always had a curry, and my mum and dad had come up from the Midlands at the time. My mother-in-law, father-in-law, brother-in-law, it was having a lovely time. And I said to my wife, I need to go and fill the car up and get some bread for tomorrow. And I was in the bookies for literally 2.5 hours, and I thought I'd been gone half an hour, and my phone was on the screen, like just sat there, and I was just spinning away. My phone was ringing, didn't even know, I must have had 12 missed calls. My wife thought I'd been in a bad car accident. Where is he? He's gone to get like bread and fill the car up. So they checked the petrol stations, and she went, by chance I just thought I'd check Ladbrokes, because I told her I wasn't betting. I said, oh yeah, I've been to GA this last time and I'm not doing it. She knew I was. And she found her sister. I was round the corner. She came in and looked, but she couldn't see me. And it was only by chance her sister came in, checked round the corner, and who's there? Me on the roulette machine. And I walked out of the bookies, got the money I'd had in the roulette machine. It was a bit, and I gave it my wife. And I went, look, I've won. And she just threw it in my face. And I'm like, no, I told you this is the last time. A couple of times you've been caught now, and blah, blah, blah. And I had to obviously tell her everything, which I did from day one, which has helped me now, nearly 6 years down the line.
Was that a big reality moment? It was thrown back in your face, like, what is the value of this when it comes with the lies and the avoidance of this social occasion and the deceit that comes with that? Was that like a reality moment? Did it sink in at that point that you think, oh, right,
I'm in trouble? Yeah, because she was going to leave me. And it's her mum who basically said, listen, he needs help, blah, blah, blah. So then I found, obviously, back to GA and stuff, and found that. And it was her mum my wife's very headstrong. She's like that. She's not materialistic in the slightest. So the money she's not interested in. It was just, she's headstrong, and if I can be deceitful once and twice, I can do it a third time. So it was like, for her, that the deceit, she always says it. She says it's the deceit. That's the biggest thing. I thought I knew who I lived with and the person I loved, and you were lying to me and this and that. But I told her that it was the addiction. It's not me, and she obviously knows that now. But it was the addiction taking over, and I'm thankful she's forgiven me. We've been together for nearly 17 years now, so it's something that's made us stronger.
Does she ever mention that, or do you ever talk about that?
Never.
That day?
Never. Sometimes we mention things and little things like, but she's never in a way where she throws it up in my face. She's never done that, and I think for her to forgive me, that's I'm thankful of. But 6 years down, I know I did wrong, and she's obviously chose to forgive me, and she says that she's never once thrown anything in my face, which I think helps with my recovery. She's brilliant with my meetings, anything I'm doing, she's first class with, and she'll help me sometimes. You know, if I'm chairing and things like that, she'll help me put into a meeting and what can make it sort of work. She's very smart.
No, it's brilliant to have that sort of support, and it's probably not something we've touched on so far in terms of the podcast about having those people in your lives who, when you need the support, it's absolutely there.
This podcast is sponsored by NHS Lancashire and South Cumbria Integrated Care Board and Beacon Counselling Trust. If you'd like to reach out, visit beaconcounselingtrust.co.uk.
Sometimes when people talk about recovery or people recognising the problem, I think they have this sort of almost 1990s idea that you disappear off to the Priory and then you come back 6 months later and everything's fine. But presumably you had that day, and then presumably you had to go back into training. Had to go back into playing. That you went back into those dressing rooms with those same conversations that people were having about what they were winning, what they were losing. So you don't get that moment of respite, presumably.
It is very difficult because there's temptation around you at all times. But there's things I do, the card schools and things like that on the bus. I'd try and sit at the front of the bus and just stay away from it, and not, obviously you're going to hear the odd thing here and there, but the thing for me was I was fortunate enough I could give my wife full control of all the money, and I know not everybody can do that, but I was in that position where it was very hard for me to have a bet, and I'm not saying I couldn't have had one, because if you're in that midst of, you can always find a way, but for me it was telling people around me from an early stage, which obviously you do it when you're good and ready, but obviously I had Simon as my manager, and since I've been in recovery, the last 3 or 4 managers I've had, I tell them on the day of signing, listen, I'm a gambling addict, blah, blah, blah. I don't even do everything. Is like games at the end, 5-a-side, or 5 a man, or do this, or there's a forfeit on it. I don't do that. So whatever you want to do, you do it. I'm not taking part in that.
No, I think, let's say it's worth bringing you at this point. I mean, absolutely full credit for Sam for being so open and honest about that story and that journey so far. I mean, it's one of them, isn't it? From a footballing point, people presume you've made it. Like there's like you're doing it. You're doing the thing we all remember when we used to play as a kid, and now it's happening for you. There's a presumption that there are no problems, that everything's going according to plan. And I guess that's clearly not the case. And I guess those opportunities to either signpost that, be made aware of it, spot it within someone in the dressing room, we've almost got to be educated to know what those signs are, so that a manager might spot it, or somebody within a club might spot it, or even, much wider, someone within a workplace would spot that there's a potential issue there.
Sam's touched on, insecure with moving clubs. It's the first time I've heard somebody talk in recovery about that affecting somebody. You look at the clubs, okay, he's moved around, but as you said, he's a professional footballer. You wouldn't think that would cause a problem. Sam's problem's been driven by being lonely, by being insecure, by not having that stability and security. So it's been fascinating for me to listen to that and that behind him, and some of his stories, the desperation in it, I can relate to that. I'm sure Clark does, and really hits home what it must be like not having the security of a contract or a bigger wage, and in that desperation of, pretending that you've lost money on the forecourt and all this kind of stuff. And it's really powerful, and like you said, hopefully we can get enough education into people to recognise all the issues we've touched on.
That idea, Clark, and actually, it echoes of your story as well around, contracts and wages and salaries being different and stuff like that. But also, in our 20s, we do put a lot of emphasis around ourselves and our workplace, and we define ourselves, don't we, of whether or not we are successful as to what career or job we've got. But actually, it's interesting to hear that actually the stability or those common threads that were actually where the value was actually in the family life, was in, the home life, or within the kids as well. To a certain extent, I guess you've got to have those negative experiences before you fully understand what that positive experience can come. But actually, full credit to sort of Sam's team, if you like, the team of people around him who were able to get him through. And I guess I'd hope that people listening to this would also be able to think, right, well, who's got my back? And if it's not somebody I could recognise, where can I find the sorts of people who can be, the person to put their arm around, or who can say, let's go and do this, let's go and have this conversation, or maybe let's recognise that there's something that's maybe not right in this situation.
100%, mate. You know, just Sam, hearing you speak there and hearing that support and love from your family, it resonates with me. I love it so much. You and I are both blessed that we've had that family support. It is so important. The flip side of that is you can have all the family support in the world, but if you don't take the step to change, it's not going to happen. We've seen numerous, examples of high-profile celebrities and players in the past who've had all the support given to them in the world, but if they haven't got that within them to turn and face in that direction and then engage with that support, it's not going to happen. And that's what I want. Everyone needs to hear, because the moment of you said your hook with gambling, I think is one of the most dangerous moments. The one that you're talking about there, where when you place the bet and it's that, the spin of the roulette, and it's like that 10 seconds of uncertainty, and it's in that moment that you thrive. The outcome's largely irrelevant in the beginning. You've got that intense buzz, the hit, almost like a drug hit. That is the hardest one to turn away from. So, mate, I commend you on your journey so far. And there's so many aspects of it that resonate with me. One that struck was, people often think that gambling consumes your mind when you've got no money. But equally, when you've got loads of money as well, because that breeds opportunity for you to carry on and feed this. You don't just lose sleep in loss. You lose it in win as well, because, the fuel's there in the tank for you to go again. I totally empathise with that one. One more thing you said is talking about the daily routines that go on at the football club that are everyday business, but unbeknownst to people, they actually underpin that kind of gambling, dynamic where, just a £5 a man for this. And, we will do the sweepstake for that. Or let's have a game of darts, 20 quid a man, stuff like that. They're casual behaviours, but to some people they can be really detrimental. And where I want to give you huge props is you stepped back into that environment, having had a 15-year career of an identity as someone who's in that. People underestimate the identity you have in the dressing room. You're the joker, you're the gambler, you're the, the one who goes out with the ladies or the guys or whatever. Once you've established that, it's so hard to change, because everyone's expectations are for you to fulfill that role. So for you to go back into that environment, mate, stand against everything that you've represented for 15 years, and then tell every new manager, look, this is me, and this is what I stand for, and you've got to accommodate it. Kudos to you, my friend. That is awesome.
I think coming back in on obviously what Clark said there, I was very fortunate. The managers that I told, so I had some John Sheridan, Martin Allen, Dean Keats, obviously Simon, and I told them from day one, and not one of them turned, and not one of them had a negative reaction to it. It was, oh, my mate said that, or whatever. Do you know what I mean? They had somebody that they could relate to, or obviously that made it easier for me. But obviously recovery is not easy. I know, like, people see it, and there'll be people watching the podcast and listening to it that are early on in recovery, and it isn't easy, because I've done something for so long that has gone out of my life, and that's what I struggled with at first. I'd had enough of doing it, don't get me wrong, but it was like, wow, I spent 8 hours a day in the bookies. What do I do now? I've got this free time. And that was when obviously I was structuring my days then, and 9 o'clock do this, 10 o'clock, I had to do that. I needed that structure. I was lucky, sort of had football, but it got to the point with football where I was missing training, I wasn't turning in, and it was a big spiral of things. So that was hard to fill the void at first, and obviously I did it, so it's tough.
Full credit.
It just takes great strength to go back into an environment where you're seen as this person, as a completely different, human being. And yeah, huge credit to you for that, Sam. I mean, that's just, when Clark mentioned it, it's just really hit home how difficult that must have been for you to do that. And yeah, you're not the joker, you're not the gambler, you're not the guy who might have a tip for us. You're suddenly, this is who I am, and this is what I'm going to be. And I think that took a lot of strength. That.
Yeah, I had a lot of troubles early on within my GA recovery, and obviously don't keep mentioning it, but it's changed my life positively, so that's why I'm a big advocate of it. But for me, it was I was at a point then, because within recovery, doing good deeds and things within my Just for Today programme, and I was doing lots for everybody else, couldn't say no, but I couldn't make myself happy. So it was getting the balance, and now it took probably 5 years down the line, 6 years down the line now, to where I can say no to things. I can, within do you know what I mean? I can live with that comfortably now. I don't have to people please all the time. You realise the people around you are the ones that are there through thick and thin. So it's like my wife, and there's people, like you say, which is my support system. I'm so lucky to have it, because not everybody gets that. But it's hard when you've done something for so long to just stop doing it and then, right, change my life now and become this brilliant person. You don't. It takes a lot of time.
Absolutely, and it's an ongoing journey, and I think for a lot of people listening to this as well, it's about the understanding that it's an ongoing journey, that it's not and then they stopped, a little bit like in the soap opera where, the alcoholic pulls the bottle of whiskey down the sink and then the new plot line starts the following Monday. I think that's the thing around asking for support, seeking support, and actually if you don't get the right support at the right place, I mean, you talked about the managers, that they all were positive, but actually if there is negativity, that you do have enough value in yourself, and you should value yourself enough to think, okay, that avenue didn't open up for me. Let's look down a different avenue, because quite clearly the pathways to a better place are there, and we've heard about them on the podcast so far. But people might not find them straight away, and that's one of the things I really hope to come back. And you touched on it yourself, Sam, when you talked about an almost instant relapse. That this isn't just and we sail off into the sunset experience. This is you'll get to the sunset, but you'll have to go this way and then that way, and it might be difficult at this point. You might have to turn back, but there's an opportunity there for you to get that view.
Yeah, of course it is. The first thing is, it's admitting you got the problem and that you're powerless to it. That was the hardest thing for me, because in my head it had brought me so much enjoyment and so many wins, but then towards the end, obviously, it didn't. So the first step was admitting I was powerless, which I did. But it's so difficult to do, and you've got to do that. But there is help out there. But obviously, all these do is give you tools to help you and try and prevent you going back to relapsing. They're only tools, because I'm in a GA room 2 hours a week. What do I do when I'm not in the GA room? Well, I touch base with other members and things like that. And obviously, I just hope anybody watching that is really struggling, doesn't see a way out. There is a way out, and I never got to the point, thankfully, where I was suicidal, but I got to the point where I was thinking of stupid things to get money to fund to clear debts. Oh, if I crash my car into that, I'll get this and all. That isn't logical. Do you know what I mean? So there's help out there. It's just, if you're gambling beyond your means, you obviously got a problem, and that doesn't mean you're gambling thousands. You might only earn £5 a week and you're gambling 6. You're living beyond your means, so it's addressing it before it gets to that, and hopefully we can do that within the podcast.
Absolutely. Sam, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you joining us. Don't forget, throughout listening to the podcast, you can get involved on social media. Drop us a message, #FootballUntold. Thanks to Sam Wedgebury, all our contributors, Cy Howarth, Clark Carlisle, to Football Untold. Don't forget, hit subscribe on the podcast now. Thank you for your streams and downloads. We'll be back very soon.
This podcast is sponsored by NHS Lancashire and South Cumbria Integrated Care Board and Beacon Counselling Trust, promoting an open discussion about gambling-related harm and the destruction it can cause. If you've been affected by anything you've heard and would like to reach out, visit beaconcounselingtrust.co.uk. Let's keep talking.